Okay, so this is a super informal, like quick tutorial on how to do equalization and some of the other audio effects settings for Logic Pro / Garageband for our composition program or other stuff we're doing with Taiko. So I've loaded up something we recorded earlier this summer. This is the home instrument backline for Utage. We have 4-track recording here. We have an Odaiko, maybe a Shime, Odaiko, and an Ashime on bowls. So anyway, I'm going to let's just because of how easy it is to hear, I'm gonna oops, what did I do? I'm gonna hone in on these bowls. That's what I did. Okay. And let's go over equalization. So the EQ settings are here. You can find them in your mixer here. Open that up, and there's generally going to be a spot for it. You can also add it as an effect. EQ, channel EQ. So you could do that, but you're always going to have an option to just open your EQ by clicking here. You can turn on or off your equalization by hitting that power button. So I think when you open it up, you might not see any lines or waves or anything. If you want to see that, you can just go ahead and click this analyze or post, and then you kind of see the frequencies of the sound we're hearing between like super low, down 20 hertz to as high as like 20,000, and that's kind of this range that we're hearing. So one of the first things you're gonna maybe want to do when you're EQing a live track is kind of identify like what parts of my my track are what I want to hear. Like what is my instrument, right? And so one way you can do it. Oh, these are all little tools. I kind of goofed this one, that's right. But these let you control different nodes that you can raise or lower the relative volume of certain frequencies. So I'm gonna just pick this one for now. This is kind of one kind of quick tool you can do to kind of identify what some of these sounds are. So I'm gonna, if I drag it left or right, I'm changing the frequency that I'm amplifying, and then up or down is, do I want to make that frequency louder or softer in the mix, right? So to I just identify what am I hearing, I might turn this around. I'm just gonna boost the whole volume to 2. You can do that over here, like turn up the median, or I guess the mean, from just this slider over here. I'm just going to turn up slightly so we can hear a bit more. Let's listen in. When I've put my identifier peak over this thing, what am I hearing? I think I'm hearing the table from when I'm hitting the bowl. So I'm getting a lot of extra noise that's not really my bowl, right? So I might consider cutting that out. What else am I getting in here? This might be part of the bowl, but let's just finish this. Ooh, this is interesting. That might be. It could be the kind of the bowl and the wood hashi as I'm kind of. Yeah, that might actually be the wood resonance is somewhere down here. Oh, that's definitely one of the bowls. Here's one of the kind of clear harmonic tones from the bowl. Oops, I'm gonna have to roll my track back a bit. Running out of song. Yeah, so maybe overtones of the bowl. Yeah, so maybe that could be one way to help identify just by ear what I'm listening to. Let me turn that off. Another thing is like maybe you can use the waves themselves to kind of help you. Like it does seem that, look, I have these two kind of distinct peaks that happen and particularly when I'm hearing that ringing bowl. So what I'm thinking is actually, this is probably a low and a high tone of one bowl and a low and a high tone of the lower bowl. I think that's how these are arranged. Let's test that real quick. Ooh. Yeah, so I think that the lower side of both of these like bimodal peaks is the lower bowl, I think, and the upper peaks of the two bimodal peaks seems to be the other bowl. Cool. So that's the sound I wanted to get, right? That's my instrument. Let me roll back the song a bit too. So what I might consider now is like cutting out extra noise. So I could use, so these tools on the end, they let you just cut off like the ends, like kind of clip, right? So for this one, where was all that range? Down here. I might, maybe I'm thinking everything below like 200 hertz is like not my sound. I can kind of change how sharp that cutoff is with moving it up or down. But now, so and if I want to hear the difference between that, we can power it on off. It's not super loud in the mix, but hopefully you can kind of hear the difference. Now you probably will hear the difference if I were to, let's say I only wanted up to about 10,000. You can hear that I actually cut out a lot of, I think, what's the natural kind of harmonic of the instrument. So I actually really don't see a big need to remove off the top. But what I would do is just listen. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm not going to cut from the top necessarily. And then, I think if I wanted to emphasize certain, parts of the sound, so we had just been using this to identify, but I could kind of make this a wider peak, for instance. Like for instance, since we found out that this down here this is both of our bowls, but it's the lower tone. So if I just wanted the whole, the lower sound to be more emphasized for both bowls, I might consider putting a little peak here, right? Maybe expand it out a bit and try to center it between their ranges. So this versus, yeah, if I kind of want to focus on that, like the bass note of that that bowl, or if I really cared about its upper sound. I don't like how that sounds, but like, I think we got both our bowls here, but this is their higher range. We could add another peak, and this is just demonstrative. I'm not saying this is how you should EQ bowls normally. I could make little peaks for both of the ranges, and they don't necessarily have to be extreme to be good EQ. Sometimes you're just looking to bring out just a little bit of sound, and then, you can really kind of help change the voice of the instrument that way. Yeah, actually, I think that feels a lot less dead. Yeah, I kind of like having focused our sound on these two major tones that the bowls are producing. Maybe let's see, do I have another one? Yeah. Ooh, just a wider range. Maybe I want to have a real clicky sound too, like if it's really for like a backbeat, right? Like maybe I want to keep some of these higher frequencies to just mark that time, right? These ones are longer notes, it seems like these ones might be sharper. So yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's like, it's something I could do, right? So that's what I might do to EQ this bowl. Yeah, so, this is something that I think for most, like, let's quickly take a look at a different track. Let's listen to Casey's Odaiko. And let's go ahead and look at this. I'm going to get rid of whatever I did before by recalling the default. All right. So what are we here? Well, first it's a bit quiet, but we can deal with that later. I'm just gonna check. Well, no, I won't. Well, let's do our same finding. Ooh. So this is kind of that woodier sound of her knuckles hitting the door. Oh, that's kind of a nice woody sound. Oh, now we're really getting that kind of reverb in here, that kind of deep, like resonating of the door, or maybe the wall around her. Yeah, so I'm not sure. This is just looking at the profile, like, yes, it's complex. It's not just a single note or something, but I think I might maybe I, just for the cleanness of this, cut out some of that low range. Yeah, and maybe I consider, let's see, I don't think we've used these ones yet. These ones, they say, instead of saying like cut from end, they're like take the end, like put a node at the limit. So you just can see what that looks like, right? So one thing I might consider doing, if I'm not like, oh, I don't want to cut out all that good piece, but I could maybe do something more along this line. I mean, yeah, I think, you know, listen to it, and that's how you kind of determine. And then maybe for this, like I would like it, like maybe I would want to give it something to kind of center around a bit, especially if it's like, you know, a backbeat instrument, you know, instead of just kind of this really kind of wide sound. Like maybe I want to focus it on something that's, you know, like what we did with the bowl is a bit like more punchy. Like, I mean, that's something you could do, but you know, you could also get a really weird sounding door if you do that. And then I might want to give it like a little bit of a body to like the main part of the sound too. So I might give like kind of a wide range to kind of these like 100 to like 500 decibel. And then yeah, then maybe I focus a little bit on the hand hitting the door up here. So let's hear that versus. Maybe. Huh. I mean, we're also EQing a door here, but which, you know, doesn't resonate maybe as much as a drum would, but you know, I think you might find you know, with how your instruments have been recorded, a lot of the room noise can get in, right? Depending on what we're recording, sometimes you know, and what we're recording on, we might get static that gets, you know, registered as sound. So you might have like kind of ranges that you're just hearing like, you know, nothing, and you might need to, or you know, just like static kind of a hiss. You might want to tone that down, or you know, how far you recorded from the mic can influence kind of what the mic's picking up. Yeah, so this is really just a tool to maybe help you think about how to do it. Maybe I can do this with an actual drum sometime. But yeah, this is how I would start maybe EQing. Now I want to do quickly, let's talk a bit about some other audio effects that might be really useful for you just like right off the bat when mixing, you know, for Taiko. Let's focus on compression. I think I'm going to highlight bowls again. I'm going to turn off these other things. So yeah, so for everything that's stacked up here in the audio effects are the effects that are turned on for this track, right? If I go ahead and turn off the EQ, all that editing I did in the EQ, that's not on. It's not being added to that sound, right? It's not that sound. You're kind of like feeding it through, and I think it is directional. So we're feeding the sound that we have recorded. We're feeding it through EQ, right? Then we're, you know, if I compress, then I'm feeding that equalized sound through a compressor. If I'm adding sub bass, I'm doing that after the compression, right? So, you know, if I wanted that, you know, sub bass ahead of time, I need to drag it up in the order. But you know, that's as we start kind of stacking them together. Let's just do the ones that are like probably super relevant, right? So compression is a way to deal with really loud peaks, right? And maybe let's look at this. Whoa! Oh, I'm sorry about that, everyone. Oh, jeez. Okay. Yikes, that was scary. Okay, can I see these wave files? Yeah. So this is kind of like the peaks aren't like terribly inconsistent between kind of the accident notes and the not. But sometimes like you know, maybe you'll record and then like you know, their upper range of the dynamic range is just, it's too loud, or you know, it's either kind of approaching kind of our max, or it, you know, just doesn't fit in with the rest of the sound. that's when we use compression. Compression and adaptive limiters or limiters are similar. The difference is a compressor will, let's see, let me open one up. Oops, why am I in KC? Oh, because I opened KC track, but I'm listening to this track. Yeah, make sure you're on the right track. Let me pause this for a second. Yeah, so a compressor, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to give you a threshold, and when the track goes above that threshold, you're going to only give back a fraction of that sound, right? So for every kind of, let's open this compressor. I don't have a compressor on this track. Let's add it. I'll show you. Yeah, this is kind of maybe important. So how to add an effect? You can click on a blank space. Let's turn off directional mix here. Let's turn off the limiter on this one. Oops, what did I do? I'm not sure. Okay, you can move these up and down, right? Like I was saying, let's pretend we had nothing else other than we did our channel EQ. Now we're going to add a compressor. So I'm going to go to this little drop down here. You see there's these broad families of effects I can do. I'm going to do dynamics, and that's where I'll find my compressors and limiters. So I'm going to open a stereo compressor. It's a stereo because this is stereo audio file. There's a left and a right component to it. Okay, so this threshold is the how loud does the sound have to be before I start compressing, and this shows you how much compression the algorithm's adding, right? So when it's at 0, it's like, it's below your threshold. I'm not compressing. Oh, you got a little bit above. I'm compressing a little bit. If I move my threshold down more, you don't have to be that loud for it to start compressing, right? So think about it this way, right? That this is no compression, and then as I drag this down, I'm adding compression, or smaller differences in sound, or smaller peaks will start being compressed. So once they're being compressed, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to return a ratio. So here's 1:1, which is the lowest, right? Which effectively means nothing. Look, as I move the threshold, I still don't see compression happening here. That's because what this ratio is saying is for every decibel above the threshold, return 1 decibel, 1:1, right? Equal no compression, right? If I set it to something like 2:1, or I think 3:1 is pretty common. I don't really know. For every 3 decibels above the threshold, this will return 1 back, right? So that means after you kind of get to this threshold, you start limiting how intense those peaks are afterwards, right? So if I turn this up, that means the higher I turn this knob, the more I'm compressing. And by that, it means what is the angle after I've hit that threshold by which I compress. So you can see here, it's very kind of on or off, right? If I take up to 30:1, as soon as I compress, I'm compressing a lot, right? If I turn this down, it's less dramatic, right? So yeah, generally good ranges, and it kind of depends on what you're doing. But I think somewhere in this range, I think 2 to 5, but 3 is a good default. I think with the a good place for this is you're probably not doing anything up here, and at this point maybe you should be thinking about an adaptive limiter or something. But you can play around with it. Somewhere in this range, I think is good. Attack and release. I think I won't do that for now, but that's something I think it deals with how fast that compression is going to kick in. And I think I might be able to share some links with some good tips for how to approach this. But I think we'll pass over that now. And then makeup is going to be, so it's just going to raise or lower the product. So we've gone through this compression process, right? We've applied a threshold and a reduction ratio. And now now that we've reduced the overall volume of this track, how much do we want to just boost the output, right? And so that's what this makeup's going to be. So these will essentially, compression will take away, it's reductive, right? Or it'll take away volume from that track. So this will just add gain at the end. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. You might want to just take a look at these nice bars at the side. Yeah, they'll show you when you're kind of passing your kind of the range that we're going to be able to capture in here, right? So if this gets too high, you're not going to really be able to hear that well. So you kind of maybe want to keep that red not too red. So that's one way you can kind of maybe do it. But I think just listening to it is probably the easiest. Okay. Yep. So that's compression, and so that might actually be super important for like drums, particularly because we play really big drums. We play them pretty loudly, and we often don't record them professionally, right? So ripe to need compression. Yeah. All right. So let's hear that's with and without the compression. I guess we didn't really think too hard about the compression, but and in this case it might just sound like we got louder, but it's I think because we just boosted the gain. What you really want to be listening to is the difference between loud and soft hits, right? Yeah, like it's compressing the dynamic range, right? A different thing you can do, adaptive limiter is very similar, except I think like the that threshold is extremely high, so it is like we're gonna cut off after a certain decibel, like it's gonna just kind of plateau it out. But I think the way that it does it is that you can kind of let's open it up. Oh man, oops, I'm on the wrong track again. All right, let's open up. Yeah, what am I doing? Why was I doing this? Yeah, you can look up adaptive limiter. It's kind of similar, but it's much harder after that threshold. But yeah, that might be useful for kind of what we're doing for like drums and stuff too. Yeah, so those are kind of okay. I think if you can do EQ and compression, that's a lot of what I think like kind of the essential toolkit you'll need for like the drums. Yeah, I think other stuff on this is just kind of more for fun. I think for the directional mixer might be useful. Let's move it up. And the directional mixer, and this might be relevant kind of, how you're all recording and stuff too. So I think, like for instance, Casey, when I'll turn her back on. I think her mic and her video, same thing, but it was away from her, looking at her playing the door, right? So the amount of like spread of that sound between the left and the right channel it's less, because the the angle from something that's farther away from the instrument is kind of less. From the sound's coming from one place, right? I think with the bowls, I was recording pretty close to the mic, right? So the mic's here, and there's two essential essentially two instruments coming from the left and right. You're gonna have a high spread on that, right? And so maybe in a mix, just depending on how you record it. Let me first turn off any panning I have on this. Oh wait, never mind. Let's not worry about it. So I can make the sound more spread out. I'm hearing the left channel more on the left. I'm hearing the right channel more on the right, or I'm hearing them closer to center, right? It's kind of a way for me to, and this is another way, usually you can also adjust your panning kind of through the kind of quick menus and stuff too, but you can also, I can change where the middle is, kind of where it's coming from the left or the right, and how far that stereo spread is using this directional mixer. And I think that's imaging. I think imaging has to do with stereo, like imaging, like where are things in the space that I'm hearing, right? Okay, so yeah, so I think that's good to get going. If you want to start adding things like exciters or sub bass, for fun, I think play around with that. I think these three can get you going though. So the quick review, what we went over is when you have a when you have a track, one of the first things you want to do is maybe look at its EQ. You can access that here. They'll automatically come preloaded with this as one of your audio effects. So you can just kind of click this as a shortcut. You can do our whole thing, what we did to go through the, finding the right sound in the EQ. You can add compression to that by adding a new plugin and doing dynamics, compressor. And I'll try to find some stuff to link about that. And then directional mixing is imaging. Okay. One last thing, I guess, about imaging. I think particularly if you're trying to combine a lot of stuff, you might consider, and maybe it's a good time. Adaptive limiters are typically put in, I think, on a mix at the end. Like once things are together, like to cut off like those extreme sound differences. I think sometimes they're added track by track for instruments that are particularly egregious violators of like drums that are not played very controlled, or maybe even like bass or like trumpet or something. Like it's not like it's only used but at the end. But I think adaptive limiters typically happen at the end. So you can also put these effects in on the master track, the one that so you can put effects on the tracks, and you can also put effects on the combination of tracks, right? The master track, right? So that's maybe where you consider putting in your adaptive limiter, and this could be useful, like for like the Shio project, where there's a lot of drums potentially that you're trying to combine. Like maybe you add an adaptive limiter at the end. You can play around with that. You might consider doing one more EQ at the end. I don't know what the best practice on that is. I think it doesn't hurt. And then the last thing for an imaging, you might want to do this binaural post-processing. Bi or two aural hearing, ears, right? This is kind of, I think this is best done at the end, but it lets you kind of average the sound, like to optimize it for certain kind of listening environments, maybe. So I think I'll just put on some, right? Like do I, hearing the sound out in front of me, hearing it more to the sides of me, hearing it like all around. Like you might just, sometimes that's really kind of, you got a lot of stuff going on, and that just helps it come together too, right? If you're not already using like kind of like panning or directional mixing, right? Like if all your tracks are just 0 in the middle, you might consider also to don't do that, right? Like you spread them out a bit, and that will help you hear the different voices, because your ears are adapted to be able to stereo hearing, right? Hear where things are in space based off the 2 points you have to record audio data, right? All right, I think that's enough. So hope this helps with live recording mixing. Let me know if you have more problems or questions or fun stuff you want to do. Okay, bye everybody.